Hey everyone, my name's Austin Spencer. I am a motion graphics artist and graphic designer and videographer. I do a little bit of everything creative, and you might have seen some of my work for the Rocket City Trash Pandas, the Huntsville Havoc, the Huntsville Visitors Bureau. I've done stuff all over town, and today I'm going to walk you through a little bit of how I go through a logo design process and eventually get that to a full-blown motion graphic, like an animated logo. So with that, let's get started. Yeah, the first thing I usually do with the logo design is I just get to know the client. I'll meet up with whoever's hiring me to design the logo, and we just we go out to lunch or something, and we just talk. It's so important that you get to really know who you're talking with and what brand values you're trying to kind of take into account with the design. So you just want to really get to know that person and know where they're coming from and see what they like and what they dislike and what they're trying to communicate with their brand. So once you get to that point, I always go home and I've got this little sketchbook with like a little grid pattern so that you can they call them like a moleskin design journal, I think is what they call them. Today I'm just going to be doing my sketches on a program called Adobe Fresco, which is fantastic if you have a touchscreen, laptop or iPad or whatever. You can use, your little stylus, and it has like a great pencil tool that feels really lifelike. And with that, let's see. I'm gonna pull up my paper here. And basically, you just start sketching ideas, and the most important thing is that you never think of an idea as like, oh, that's not going to work. I'm just not going to try it. Like literally everything that crosses your mind, you're going to put it on the paper and just see if it works. I'll come up with 30 to 40 sketches, off the bat. Just all of them might be stupid, but there might be one that just really kind of hits the mark, and that's what you're searching for. So let's say our client is let's say that they have a transportation system in we'll call it Davidson Transportation. Maybe they're like a subway system, and they're known for they have kind of a bad reputation around town for being dirty and with fossil fuels and everything. Like they're trying to give more of a clean progressive vibe to them. So that's what we're trying to communicate with this rebranding strategy. And they really want a D to be somewhere in the logo because it's Davidson. So let's try to find a creative way to make like a D icon that will represent them. So like I said, we're just going to sketch just endlessly. We're just going to sketch as many ideas as we can. We're going to do every D that we can imagine. I'm going to take my keyboard off so that we can get into full-blown sketch mode. What you're looking for is just, creative ways to reimagine what you're looking at. So here's the D. That's the uppercase, lowercase. Start looking for imagery within that letter. So, say like this stroke right here could be like a rail path or something like that. You've got little sketch marks. Start bringing in like a full-blown stroke, and usually I'm working with paper that has a grid on it, so you can get a little more like perfect shapes, but just for the sake of this tutorial we're working here. What I'm kind of thinking, so since we're all about moving forward, since it's transportation, we're moving forward, like progressing the brand and everything. I'm thinking maybe like this negative space here we can use like an arrow. So maybe we've got something going on here with an arrow. That's the janky arrow, sorry. But hold on. Maybe if we just refine it here. I'm going to turn on my smoothing. That'll help. Yeah, that looks a lot cleaner. Okay, so maybe something that kind of conveys the negative space as an arrow. And but normally, so for the sake of this tutorial, I'm just going to kind of stick with this first concept idea, but realistically, you should be going through so many different ideas that, you know, you're just gonna feel like drained by the end of the process, and then you'll want to take a day maybe and then come back and just see what works. But yeah, for the sake of it, we're just gonna kind of go with our first design that kind of hits. So I'm going with this arrow. It's not quite clean. You just keep cleaning it up. Oh, eraser's a little big there. I think there's something to it that we can work with. You know, maybe we add a circle around it, or second ring, or like maybe even add, you know, this type of thing. But the important thing is that I kind of have my concept in mind. And since this isn't really like a sketch heavy concept, this is something I can do mostly with, you know, geometric shapes and like pre-built fonts. Like I think I'm about ready to where I can just kind of tackle it digitally in Adobe Illustrator. So normally if there's like a full-blown illustration as part of the logo, like maybe you have a face in it or something like that, what you'll want to do is screenshot one of these sketches or scan one of your sketches if you worked with actual paper, and then you'll go through and like digitally trace it in Adobe Illustrator. For this particular one, I'm just gonna start it digitally off the bat, since we're working with mostly geometric items and built-in fonts. So with that, I'm gonna pull up Adobe Illustrator, which I use for all my logo designs. I think Illustrator's the way to go, or an Illustrator equivalent, and the reason why is because it uses vectors. And what vectors are is, you know, when you pull up a JPEG image and you zoom in really big and it gets like really pixelated, the thing with vectors is it's working with, you know, just pure data where you can like infinitely scale it. And that's so important with a logo, because you don't know what they're going to need to use the logo for in the future. They might have to put it on a billboard. They might have to just put it on a phone. You know, that flexibility should be up to them. It shouldn't be up to you to just like decide this is the size of your logo up front. So Illustrator is the way to go for sure with a logo design. And I'll get that started up. Okay, so now that we have Illustrator opened up, I just once again want to emphasize that, you know, I'm going to be making this logo here, and I'm going to sign off on it because it's something I've created and I feel like it's appropriate for this tutorial. But just because I'm here saying that this is a good logo, that doesn't necessarily mean this style is going to work for every brand, or that this exact method of how I got here is how you need to be doing it. It's so important that it's like I said, communication is everything. You need to really, really, really know who you're designing for and what you're trying to achieve with the logo. And the actual design process, if you've got any experience with designing or sketching or anything like that, that part needs to come like, you know, just instinctively almost, because you need to get to a point where it feels like, okay, this is obviously the type of logo they need, and now it's just a matter of getting it, you know, digitized. So I'm going to help you with the digitization part of that process. So with that said, we got Illustrator open, and we're going to try to make that little D arrow sketch that I had in a digital space. So if you haven't used Illustrator before, this left side here, this is where you can like select all of your tools. So like here's your text tool. It's almost like a really fancy Microsoft Word meets, you know, Microsoft Paint, except like way better. So if you want to make text, you use your type tool here. So that's how we're going to make our D to start out with. So you can just click and drag this little box here. And if yours is like mine, it might have this like placeholder text by default. It's highlighted, so before you click anything, just backspace and get rid of it. I'm going to click all caps D, and that's obviously very small, so I'm going to bump that up. Let's try like 272, and even more, 372. That'll get started. Actually, I'm going to go even more. Let's try 5. Cool. Okay, so I'm not loving this font. Let's try something a little bolder. So if you have the Adobe suite, I definitely recommend going to Adobe Fonts. They have tons of amazing fonts that you can just activate and then it's automatically installed. It's great stuff. I already have quite a few installed. Let's see, what's one that I like? Do I have Helvetica? Futura is pretty good. Can't go wrong with Futura. Let's try bold. So that's a pretty good starting point. I like the thickness of it. It's got a nice simple shape to it. So we'll start with that. Okay, so first thing we gotta do is we gotta change that hollow spot into an arrow. Now, your first thought, if this is your first time working with the software, is to just draw an arrow over it. But what we're gonna do is like literally physically change the shape of this D. And to do that, we're gonna start by turning this into a shape so that it's no longer text. To do that, you go to, so you click on that, then you go to Object, Expand, and then those can still stay selected. And you see what it did there? That now there's like an outline around all of it, and that's because you've turned it into a shape that you can now alter. So these little points right here, these are called anchor points, and you can select each individual one and literally move it around and distort the D however you want. And then there's these little handles that come off of the anchor points, and you can change the curvature of it. We're gonna leave that outer edge how it is because we like how it is. But what we're gonna do is we're gonna get rid of this inner path here, and to do that, you select this little mouse right here. So let me talk about these two. The selection tool, that's how you select like entire objects. The direct selection tool will get you like the specific point that you want to alter. So if you use that, you can click the corner here and only affect that anchor point. So if I deleted that anchor point, it would just get rid of that. As opposed to if I was clicking it with the selection tool, it would just delete the entire D. So we're going to use our direct selection tool, and we're going to click that anchor there. And if you notice, you delete that part, and then you can just keep deleting them, everything that was connected to that path. So now we got rid of that. And what we're going to do is make our arrow that fits inside the D. So let's do, I don't think there's a pre-built arrow that'll work for this. So we're going to draw by hand. Let's start with a square. All right, I'm going to use a white square, and I don't know if you just saw what I just did there, but these are our color tools. The fill is what you want to be white, and then the stroke is like the outline. You want that to be blank, so make sure you click that little empty space with the red stripe through it. That means that there's no stroke. What we're going to do is just draw an arrow. And it's okay if it's not perfectly lined up right now. We're just trying to get it to look about right. And then we'll worry about aligning it and everything after that. So I'm going to use a square, and then, so look, if you click your shape tool over here, if you right click it, you can pull up extra options. Polygon tool is for like basically anything that isn't a square or a circle or a star. So pull that up, and if you click and drag, you'll notice that it's a hexagon at the moment. No need to fear. You can turn that into a triangle, because if you click your up and down arrow keys, you can change the amount of points on the shape. So I'm going to click down to where it's a triangle. And then using my selection tool here, I'm going to rotate it. And a really handy tip here is you can rotate at 90-degree angles by holding shift, or I guess 45-degree angles. So that'll make sure that you get it perfectly at a 90-degree angle. And then just like with Microsoft Paint or whatever, you can use these little rescale tools. Depending on which version of Illustrator you have, you might need to hold down shift while you're rescaling so that you're not distorting it too far one way or the other. So I'm holding down shift right now while I rescale. And I'm just going to try to fit it about where you would expect the inside of that D to be. And I'm going to I might distort mine a little bit. That might make it feel a little more natural. Let's see. And so much of the process is this, just tinkering, you know, just until it feels just right. What I might do, so since there's a lot of space here and on this bottom side compared to everywhere else, what I might do is alter the shape of this path so that it kind of conforms along this arrow shape a little more. So I'm going to select that anchor there. Maybe stretch it out just a little bit. I think that helps some. Let me see if I round this off, am I going to lose that arrow quality? Yeah, a little bit. Stretch that out a little more. Just tinkering, you know. Eventually it'll feel right. You just keep trying things. And one thing I like to do too is if I'm making progress with an idea that you know, it feels like it's onto something, but I'm not 100% on it yet, I'll just select, you know, the whole thing and copy and paste it somewhere off my artboard, and then I can come back to it later and try something else with it. So that'll come in handy maybe later if I totally mess up what we got going here. All right, I think I'm liking that so far. It doesn't have to be perfect for this tutorial, but yeah. So if you feel like, if you're following along with me right now and you know, one of your shapes is off center or whatever, a really handy way to make sure everything's in line is you can just click and drag here, and up here you have your alignment tools. And if you're not seeing them, you can pull them up by going to Window and then Align, and just select Vertical Align, and there you go. They're all where they need to be. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and turn this into a shape so that it's all just one piece. So we're going to go back to that tool I was telling you about earlier. Object, expand. All right, so we're all good there. And what we have is we still have intersecting shapes here, so we're going to turn it all into one piece by going to, let's see, Window, Pathfinder. So Pathfinder is super useful. I like to use Trim, and what Trim does is it basically just collapses all of your shapes down into one, how do I describe this? So imagine all of these shapes are like cookie cutters, and you've got the D as your dough and the arrow as your cookie cutter. This tool will just, like, you know, push the cookie cutter down, if that makes sense. So Trim, you've now cut that piece out of your D, out of the black part there. And then, so now it's square, triangle. These are all three totally distinct shapes, but they all don't intersect anymore. So you can just delete that arrow part. And now there you go. You got your custom D arrow logo shape thing. All right, so this is a good start. I think I want to add like a circle to it just to give it a little bit more of something. So just so we don't lose anything we got going here, I'm going to use gray so that it's easy to distinguish our different shapes. Let's go to your layers. So Window, Layers. And this will kind of help you decide what needs to go on top, what needs to go on bottom. So since I want this circle to be kind of behind the D, so I'm going to create a new layer down here. And I'm going to drag it to the bottom. And I'm going to make a circle. And so notice how Illustrator will tell you where the exact center of your page is. that really comes in handy for something like this. So if you highlight the center and then click and drag while holding Alt and Shift, it'll make a perfect circle that just expands from that center point. And it doesn't look totally center with the D just because of the shape of that that letter. But we'll fix that in just a second. So if you click and drag while holding Shift, you can kind of do like a straight line. And I think that looks much better. Cool. All right, so I'm thinking maybe let's make the circle the like brand color that we decide, and we'll make the D part like the negative space that cuts out. And something I forgot to touch on that I think is really important to highlight now is that I think every good logo should work as a monochromatic, like colorless white logo. And the reason for that is, you know, they might need to print it on a t-shirt or something where they have limited options. They might need to overlay it on top of some video footage, and it really needs to be important that it can just stand out as its own thing with no color. So I like to work with totally monochrome shapes to start out with, and then kind of splash color in once we get to like the finalizing stages. And so right here, I'm thinking, you know, we'll just work with black, and we're going to use that Pathfinder tool again to get us to that point. So like I said, trim, we're going to do the cookie cutter. And now what you'll notice is you can cut this D out, and now it's the negative space inside the circle, and it's all one shape. And I think I'm actually going to scale down that D a little bit and get my layers. For some reason it's highlighting everything. Ah, that's why. That circle went in the wrong layer. Yeah, be mindful of your layers there. Okay, so when you're working with something like this, where you've got like an object inside of a shape, it can really come in handy to. Sorry. Okay, so when you're working with an object inside of a shape like this, it can be hard to kind of like scale it to a degree that feels kind of right for you know, just like the right amount of border between the shape and the object. So what I like to do is work with the kind of golden ratio mindset. If you don't know what that is, it's like the Fibonacci spiral. So the equation, like if you're kind of working with what was the math behind this? It sounded so much cooler the first time I learned it. I'll describe it this way. So scaling it down by thirds tends to be the right way to work with something like this. So what I like to do is, you know, scale this object up so that it fits right along the border of that circle, and then go to transform. And so here's your width and your height. If you can just go to one of your values here and make sure that they're linked by clicking that, and then just type times 0.66. That makes it so that it's 2/3 the size it currently is, and then enter. So that's like, from a mathematical standpoint, I don't understand the explanation. I tried to explain earlier, but I don't get it. But from a mathematical standpoint, supposedly that's like a visually pleasing ratio to work with. So that's what I like to do. We're at 2/3 the sides, and yeah, looks pretty good. So now we're gonna do our little cookie cutter here. Pathfinder, and then trim, and then get rid of the D there. Cool. So that's looking pretty cool. Now it's all one shape, and you can change it to whatever color you want, and yeah, that D is going to stay white. All right, so I'm thinking maybe we add an extra little like border around it. That could be kind of cool. And to do that, you can use your circle, and you can do just the outline of a circle. And so by doing that, you just kind of switch these colors. So sort of like I said earlier, there's the fill and your stroke color. we have just the stroke highlighted. We're going to draw another circle around it. And I'll start by doing it the exact same size, but then I'm going to rescale it using that Shift-Alt tool I was telling you about while you drag it Shift and Alt. Just going to scale it up a little bit. And I'm going to increase our stroke size so you can see it a little better. Like that. About 25. And it's generally a good idea to kind of stick with one stroke weight for all of your strokes. So kind of imagine this white part of the circle here as a stroke. So let's try to make the white and the gray stroke the same width. So if you look at the space here and the space here, it's about equal now. And that just looks a little nicer usually. I mean, you do you, but that's what I think. All right, so we got a pretty good symbol going here. I don't want to overcomplicate it. I think this looks pretty nice. And you'll want to provide a few different variations of it. Maybe give the client one where there's no outer ring here, or maybe one where it's just the D, or whatever. Just give them lots of options to choose from. But let's say that I presented this to the client. They said they really like this idea. We're going to go with this. So now might be the time to talk about colors. What should your brand colors be? Like I said, Davidson Transportation, our fake imaginary company for this tutorial, they're focused on looking more green. They want green energy. They want people to feel like they're not harming the planet by spending their money with Davidson Transportation. So why not literally go green with it? It doesn't always have to be so on the nose, but in their case, I think they're feeling it. So I usually say go for kind of a muted color. When you go full blown like neon, it can just get like a little crazy. So let's try kind of a I think Vibrant's fun. Vibrant's kind of in right now, but yeah, keep it like not totally saturated. Maybe about right here. Yeah, it's a little bright. Let's darken it. That's a pretty fun color. And then right off the bat, this gray contrasts with it pretty nicely. I kind of like that. Maybe give them a version that has all the... Oh, my bad. I'm going to expand that and turn it into a shape. There we go. Okay, so your eyedropper tool here, that's how you can pick like any color that's already on the page and just apply it to the same thing. So if I wanted to turn this green, I could just do my eyedropper tool, click that. So, you might do a version that's that. You might do a version that's got the gray too. I'm kind of liking this gray though. Adds a little bit of depth to it. And yeah, let's say they just absolutely love this. They say, this is our icon. This is what we're going with. Then great, add some text to it. There's a few different ways to do. There's a few different versions of a logo that you want to present to the client. You want to have one that works in a square format. You want to have one that kind of works as like a letterhead that's stretched out. Usually that can all be determined by just the placement of the title of the company. So in this case, if we want to make our wide logo, we'd maybe put the text on the side here. Large text. Davidson. It's a good looking font. I love Futura. Or is it Futura? Davidson Transportation.
I've always said
Futura. That's what I'm thinking. Yeah, Future. Yeah, that looks pretty good. And And this is just me. You know, you don't always have to be like a brand strategist with your client. I like to do a little bit of that, but I would almost say just looking at this, just going Davidson like that. That's like simple and to the point and looks pretty nice. Like it's not such a cluttered logo that way. So like maybe pitch something like that to them if it kind of pops in your head, and maybe they'll consider it. I want to pretend for my own convenience that they did because I really like that. Davidson. And things won't always go smooth. Sometimes you'll have a client who just really knows what they want, and that's okay too. Sometimes it's nice not to have to put a whole lot of thought into it and just bring someone's vision to life, and that can be really rewarding. But right now we're kind of simulating that we get a little bit of the control here. I'm gonna make that text that same green color, I think. Or maybe I'll try gray. Just toy around with it. Maybe black. Yeah, I think we need to separate it with black. I'm going to scale that down a little bit. Usually you don't want it much taller than your font. Just enough to make it separate, Oop. I kind of like that. One thing that does stand out to me is that the stroke width of this font is like a lot thicker than what we've got with this ring. So now that I see it as a complete picture, I'm thinking maybe we'll make this ring a little thicker. And yeah, don't be afraid to go back and change things like that. Sometimes you don't see the complete picture until you're this far down the road, and it's good to just go back to tweak tiny things like that. So I'm gonna go back, make our stroke a little thicker. I'm gonna try to match that font as best as I can without totally throwing off the design. Let's rescale that. Get rid of our old ring. Scale the whole thing down. Yeah, that's pretty thick. So like maybe go half the weight. Sometimes if you have to deviate from our same stroke size for everything rule, it's okay to kind of like fraction it by halves or by thirds. Let's try that. That might get us closer to where we need to be. Yeah, I'm liking that. Okay, I'm gonna turn that into an expanded shape. Gonna align it. That align tool is super useful. Make sure you know where that is. Go to Window, Align, or sometimes it's already up here depending on what word space you're working with. All right. I think that's pretty cool. I mean, it's simple. It's you got that pop of green that's kind of eye-catching. I think they'll like it. Cool. So before you finalize the logo, it's very important to make sure that your kerning is good. And if you haven't heard of what kerning is, that's like the space in between letters. That is a classic rookie mistake. Is just kind of like typing out your title and just leaving it and assuming it looks good. Most fonts, they do a good job spacing the letters out or designing the letters so that they space evenly, but it's never quite perfect until you have your exact combination of letters in the order you want them. So you have to kind of manually tweak that. What I like to do is, so you bring up your character tools by going to Window and then Type and then Character. So I've already got it pulled up here. But I find that starting out with, instead of auto, going to optical gets you a little closer to where you need to be. But then what you want to do is, starting from your first space here, you use right here, set the kerning between two characters. You just tweak that until it looks like evenly spaced. And so I'm seeing To me personally, I like, so imagine that you, let me get my pen tool. Let's look at it this way. Oop. If you were to draw a shape in between every letter, that just kind of shows how much space there is. And you don't have to like literally do this, but just imagine it. So which of these two shapes looks bigger? I think the one on the left looks a little large compared to this one. So that's kind of how you have to envision it while you're kerning. So make those spaces the same size. And sometimes it's just a subtle little, like you can barely see the movement, but it'll make the difference. All right. So just go down the line, make sure this first space is equal to this next one, and then make sure this one's equal to that one, and so on, and then you'll eventually get to where it's all pretty evenly spaced. So these two I think look pretty equal before and after the V. We're gonna go in between here now. And then I think that one could use a little touch there. See, that one needs to be a little tighter. All right, so overall that looks a little more even to me. And sometimes it can be really tricky and you spend a while like, just going back and forth tweaking it, but for this I think it looks nice. Okay, so we present it to the client and they say, wow, that's awesome. We want this for everything. Thank you very much. You're my hero. So yeah, I hope that was helpful to some of you. I know that's like a lot to absorb in such a short amount of time, but the most important thing is that you're just familiarizing yourself with the software and kind of like getting my perspective on the process. That'll help you just kind of see maybe this is the way I need to approach it. And yeah, I hope you're able to take this and keep learning and keep creating and do great things with your new skills and your ambition. So thank you so much. Bye.